The United Nations, or the UN, was born from the ashes of a devastating world war. It was created in 1945 with a single powerful idea: to bring countries together to prevent another global conflict. Imagine a giant meeting room where every nation, big or small, has a seat at the table. This is the essence of the UN General Assembly. Its primary mission is to maintain international peace and security, to foster friendly relations among nations, and to be a center for harmonizing the actions of countries. It is a place for dialogue, a platform where leaders can talk through their differences instead of resorting to violence. Beyond just talking, the UN does a great deal of work on the ground. Through its many agencies like UNICEF and the World Health Organization, it helps children, fights diseases, and provides food to those suffering from famine. It sends peacekeepers to conflict zones, observers to monitor elections, and experts to help countries develop their economies. The blue helmets of the UN peacekeepers are a familiar symbol of this effort, representing a global commitment to stability. These actions touch millions of lives every day, often in places far from the world's headlines, providing a vital lifeline for the most vulnerable populations. The structure of the UN is complex, with several main bodies. The General Assembly is where all 193 member states get an equal vote on important global questions. Then there is the Security Council, which is responsible for maintaining peace. It has 15 members, but 5 of them, the United States, China, Russia, France, and the United Kingdom, are permanent and hold a special power known as the veto. This means any one of these 5 countries can block a decision, even if all other members agree. This structure was a product of the post-World War II era, reflecting the power dynamics of that time. So the UN was designed as a forum for cooperation, a tool for humanitarian aid, and a guardian of international law. It was founded on the hope that diplomacy could triumph over war, and that collective action could solve problems that no single nation could tackle alone. For decades, it has played a central role in decolonization, promoting human rights, and coordinating global efforts on issues like health and the environment. But today, as we face new and complex challenges, many people are asking a difficult question: is this institution, created for the world of 1945, still effective in the 21st century? One of the most persistent criticisms leveled against the United Nations is its slow and often cumbersome decision-making process. The organization is a massive bureaucracy, designed to give every member nation a voice. While this democratic ideal is noble, it can lead to endless debates, negotiations, and delays. Before any action can be taken, especially on sensitive political issues, proposals must pass through numerous committees and councils. This process can take weeks, months, or even years. By the time a consensus is reached, the window of opportunity for effective intervention may have already closed, leaving conflicts to escalate and humanitarian crises to worsen. Think of it like a very large ship trying to make a sharp turn. The captain might see the iceberg ahead, but turning the vessel requires a long and complicated series of maneuvers. In the UN, this translates into a struggle to respond quickly to fast-moving events. For example, when a civil war breaks out, the Security Council might spend weeks debating the wording of a resolution. Meanwhile, people on the ground are suffering. This slowness is not necessarily because of ill will. It is built into a system that prioritizes agreement and state sovereignty above all else, which can be a disabling feature in a world demanding swift action. This bureaucratic inertia extends beyond just security issues. Consider the global challenge of pandemics. When a new virus emerges, a rapid, coordinated global response is crucial. The World Health Organization, a UN agency, plays a key role, but it can be hampered by political considerations and the slow pace of official declarations and recommendations. Getting all 193 member states to agree on travel restrictions, vaccine distribution, or information sharing protocols is an immense logistical and political challenge. The result is often a patchwork of national responses rather than the unified global strategy that is truly needed to contain a worldwide threat effectively. Ultimately, this deliberation is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it ensures that actions have broad international support and are not rushed. On the other, it creates a perception that the UN is an organization that is better at talking about problems than at solving them. For critics, this institutional paralysis means the UN is consistently one step behind the world's crises. They argue that in an age of instant information and rapidly evolving threats, from cyber attacks to sudden refugee flows, A system that moves at a glacial pace is not just inefficient, it is becoming dangerously obsolete and irrelevant to the real needs of people in crisis. A fundamental challenge for the United Nations lies within its most powerful body, the Security Council. The veto power held by its 5 permanent members, or P5, is perhaps the most controversial aspect of the UN's structure. This rule allows any one of these nations, the United States, Russia, China, France, or the United Kingdom, to single-handedly block any substantive resolution. This means that if a proposed action goes against the interests of one of these countries or its allies, it simply will not happen. This has created numerous deadlocks, rendering the UN powerless in the face of major international conflicts where P5 interests are at stake. The war in Ukraine is a stark and recent example. Russia, as a permanent member of the Security Council, launched a full-scale invasion of another sovereign nation. Yet, any attempt within the Council to condemn the aggression or take meaningful action against Russia has been immediately vetoed by Russia itself. This creates a situation where the UN, an organization created to prevent such wars, is forced to stand by while one of its most powerful members violates the very principles of the UN Charter. It exposes a deep flaw where the system cannot police its own most powerful constituents, undermining its credibility as an impartial arbiter of peace. This issue is not new. Throughout the Cold War, the frequent use of the veto by the United States and the Soviet Union often paralyzed the Security Council. More recently, disagreements over conflicts in Syria, Israel, Palestine, and elsewhere have shown the same pattern. China may use its veto to protect its allies or its economic interests, while the United States has often used its veto to shield Israel from critical resolutions. This dynamic transforms the Security Council from a forum for global security into an arena for geopolitical competition, where the national interests of a few powerful states can override the collective will of the international community. For many smaller nations and critics of the UN, this concentration of power is undemocratic and anachronistic. It reflects the world of 1945, not today's multipolar reality where countries like India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan have significant global influence but lack the same authority within the UN system. The veto power essentially creates 2 tiers of membership, the P5, who are above the rules, and everyone else who is subject to them. This inequality erodes trust in the institution and fuels the argument that the UN is not a body for all nations, but a tool for the powerful to maintain the status quo. As the world grapples with colossal challenges like climate change, global pandemics, and widespread conflict, the United Nations finds itself at a critical juncture. Its inability to prevent wars, its slow response to crises, and the paralysis caused by the Security Council veto have led many to question its relevance. The core promise of the UN, to unite the world to solve shared problems, seems to be failing when we need it most. The institution appears too weak to stop powerful nations from acting unilaterally and too slow to address existential threats like a warming planet, where scientific consensus is clear but political action remains fragmented and insufficient. However, completely dismissing the UN would be a mistake. Despite its flaws, it remains the only truly global institution we have. It provides a vital platform for diplomacy, where dialogue can still happen even between adversaries. Its humanitarian agencies do life-saving work every single day, feeding the hungry, protecting refugees, and vaccinating children. These successes rarely make headlines but form a fabric of international cooperation that would be difficult, if not impossible, to replace. Abolishing the UN without a viable alternative could lead to a more chaotic and dangerous world, governed only by the principle of might makes right, which is precisely what the UN was created to prevent. The debate, therefore, is not simply about whether the UN is good or bad, but about whether it can be reformed to meet the demands of our time. Calls for change are growing louder. Many argue for an expansion of the Security Council to include new permanent members that reflect today's geopolitical realities. Others advocate for modifying or even abolishing the veto power to prevent gridlock. Such reforms would be incredibly difficult to achieve, as they would require the agreement of the very permanent members who benefit from the current system. It is a classic paradox. The ones with the power to change the rules have the least incentive to do so. Ultimately, the future of the United Nations depends on the collective will of its member states. Is the world ready to recommit to the principles of multilateralism and build a more effective, equitable, and responsive global body? Or will nationalism and self-interest continue to erode its foundations? The UN is a reflection of our world, divided and imperfect, yet also interconnected and capable of cooperation. Whether it becomes a relic of the 20th century or is revitalized for the 21st, is a question that we, as a global community, must answer. Its relevance hangs in the balance, and so too does our ability to tackle the shared destiny of our planet.